You are listening to Reinvented. I'm your host, Jen Eckhart. I know this sounds cheesy, but I truly believe that a day spent without laughing is a day wasted. Life is just better when you're laughing. A good laugh heals a lot of hurts, which is why I'm stoked to bring on one of the most well-known, influential comedians of all time. His comedy acts quite literally defined a generation. He's had a long and interesting career as a comedian and film actor. He's sparked plenty of laughs, but is also no stranger to controversy. Who isn't these days? He's sold out arenas. He's performed at laundromats outside of Boston. But the coolest part is by age 35, he became the second stand-up comedian to ever sell out Madison Square Garden. Dane Cook, welcome to Reinvented.
That is an introduction, and I don't know if I could have said it any better, and of course I couldn't, because that would come across as very egotistical if I opened with that.
That was such a great intro, but now I got to be like, why weren't you the first comedian to sell out MSG? Like, well, did you not have what it takes?
Was a big inspiration to me, which was initially Steve Martin and then later Dice, two comics that took stand-up comedy like probably beyond their wildest dreams. And growing up watching these performers that were very gifted, but also knew how to work that larger crowd, it kind of put it in my head like, man, if I ever built up my little, local audience into something more major, I'd love to someday stand in one of those arenas. And sure enough, we got there.
Would you consider Steve Martin a mentor of yours? Who are your mentors in the comedic world? I'm curious.
Yeah, no, thank you for asking me that, because you don't get to where you're at without people that you're wanting to emulate, and certainly people that you're, gleaning important wisdom from. And Steve Martin was a person that early in my career, I could look at as like a template of like possibility, but also a bit of philosophy. I found things that he wrote or interviews that he did, and kind of just studied the man as well as the performer. And then later in life, I was fortunate enough to meet him. I actually have his book right back here on my shelf that he signed for me. Awesome. And we got to know each other a little bit. So then I got to kind of get the inside scoop on both the trials and tribulations of his career coming up, and then kind of where do you go once you're cemented, but have all this passion in you to want to take it beyond. And so I learned, and I still continue to learn a lot from him.
That's awesome. Well, look, here's the good news. I'm so happy you're on my show because guess what? You are the first ever comedian to be on this show. I know it's not Madison Square Garden, but we do send out like really cool plastic pins when you're the first of your industry to make it on the show. Yes. So expect a pin in the mail in about like 6 to 7 months.
You haven't made it until you get the pin in the mail. That's what we always say, right?
Exactly.
You're running to that mailbox. You're waiting for the plastic pin. That's what we all.
There you go.
Validation is the plastic pin, but it's really great to be here. So thank you.
So Dane, I wanted to invite you on my show. Jokes aside, pun intended, because to me, you symbolize what it means to reinvent oneself, one's career. I mean, you literally innovated how comedians interacted with their fans by utilizing MySpace of all platforms, which is just beyond brilliant. You were one of the first comedians to leverage social media, attracting a huge following on MySpace in the early to mid 2000s. Do you still have a MySpace page? And if so, do you check it frequently? Like, I have to know this.
It's kind of funny because now when you're talking to, young people, you go, oh, the MySpace, which is TikTok 1.0, we call it. That was the original like hub where everybody, or at least, college age people were kind of, hanging out and collaborating and corroborating sometimes music or spoken word, or in my case, comedy. MySpace got taken over, and then I think it was like completely either shut down or reinvented itself. And unfortunately, the numbers did not travel with it. So we lost those original fans, but they find you in other places. It's kind of funny how people pop up on a new social media site and say, I still have screen captures of our early conversations and stuff, which is really cool.
Yeah. By the way, I'm honored that you consider me part of the TikTok generation because I'm 32 and even I don't know how to TikTok. I don't know what a TikTok is.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I even want to know. I would much prefer we live in a world where MySpace dominated Facebook, but that's just a personal preference of mine. I also really enjoyed changing the theme song that was featured on your page when people would go to. It was just like much simpler times, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We need like a community college teaching like a how-to TikTok course. For anybody who's like over the age of 22, who's like, what am I doing in here for real?
What is my purpose? So, all right, burning follow-up question, and I promise I'm going to get off the MySpace subject in a second, but do you know Tom from MySpace, the founder of MySpace?
Yes. Yeah, I know him. I don't know him like in a friend circle now, but back in the day when Tom was just the little picture on everybody's profile, he came to the Laugh Factory one night.
Oh my gosh.
And so got to meet him, get the origin. How did it all come together? But what was so interesting about him is I took a picture at the end of the night. And if you remember MySpace, it was like he was always sideways kind of looking, and he knew to turn.
Yeah. That's
it looked like his profile shot. But what an amazing, like, to think about, like, they took that from, obviously humble beginnings, and I think they sold it for $1 billion or something. And you go, what an incredible story of the first social media to really, be a meeting spot for everybody. It was awesome.
Absolutely. I picture him as this elusive man, like living in Tahiti with like hot babes serving him grapes while he's just like counting stacks of cash. But like, good for him. So he's just like a normal, regular dude. He's not here like on Zoom, like trying to make something of himself.
He's a photographer, and I know he just travels the world on the 500 million that he made for his cut, and he just takes pictures. He does have a social media, so you can see his photography.
That's awesome.
He's posting nonstop as he's traveling around the world on his MySpace kickback.
Yeah. His yachts, his private jets. All right, last MySpace question. I promise I'm going to get to why you're on this show. But if you had to choose a top 8 or like a top 5 today, who would it be?
Well, let's see. Some of the people that I'm like a geek. So I like people that are in the tech world. I certainly think there would be some Silicon Valley people in there, some people that are like more of that kind of what makes Chat GPT run. And I'm far more interested, like some people love athletes and only care about like, talking stats. I've always loved tech. So
that's interesting. Wow.
I would name names that you probably don't know, but it would not be people in the entertainment world.
Comedy boy, try me. I worked for the Fox Business Network, covered the tech sector widely. So give it to me.
Well, first of all, there was somebody who I really, really loved some of the tech she created, Polly Hobson, who was, for some years, she was up with Google, and they were the first people to create an app that was called Say Now, which was really the first version of social audio. Before anybody was doing social audio, Polly and her crew had it. I was on it. It was an incredible resource to be able to, you could hit a button and communicate with a global audience, kind of similar to what Spaces does now, or Clubhouse or Breakout. It's like, that was the first version of going live to a global audience. So people like Polly would be on my top 8.
I rented your new comedy special, Above It All, on Amazon Prime in HD. It was worth every cent, every penny. I loved it.
Yeah, that was Marty Kullner. Marty, who did Vicious Circle, the first special that I did with HBO. Yeah. And then he came back, we did Isolated Incident. And Marty, who has an illustrious career, I called him up and said, I would love to work with you again and do something to celebrate 30 years of stand-up comedy. And he helped put me on the map. And I feel like he helps keep me on the map because what he does is absolutely beautiful aesthetically. So I was honored to work with Marty again. So I'm glad you had a chance to see it.
It was incredible. I mean, state-of-the-art technology, including drones with the aerial shots of the Hollywood Hills. But honestly, Dane, the coolest thing, in my opinion, was you self-funded this comedy special. You also did it on I think, the back porch of your house. You shuttled a bunch of people to your house to watch your stand-up. To me, that was so innovative and badass to not be like beholden to any major streaming network and to do something yourself. You made this epic comeback and essentially reinvented yourself by saying, hey, man, I'm going to do this my way. It's definitely the road less traveled, more sweat equity, but there is something to be said for doing something yourself. What inspired you to do it that way?
I think it's really what you just said, more of like wanting to have control, not only of the the distribution, but I love the analytics that come with that. It helps as a touring artist know what regions are enjoying the show, what countries potentially are clamoring for a live performance based on that data. And unfortunately, when you do a deal with an outlet, they own that data.
Right.
And they probably won't share very much of it with the artist because that would be leveraging.
Right.
And so they keep the stats kind of on the QT. And I'm not for that. I really think that it should be like allowing artists to go, where can I grow my audience? Where can I do better? Where can I leverage a better deal for myself? And so if you can own your IP, which now I do, then you have the opportunity to kind of lease it out to wherever you want that to go into the world. So I think it's the beginning of an incredible decade ahead, because now I have these outlets set in place for my next releases.
It was my lifelong dream to be a TV journalist, Dane. I accomplished a lot at a young age during my journalism career, but I can honestly say that what I'm doing now, using podcasting as a medium to share inspirational stories like yourself that you would otherwise never hear about on the news, is so much more fulfilling. So there is something said to be doing something yourself, to not be listening to like the corporate overlords chirping in your ear. I'm curious, how have you used your past experiences in comedy navigating the world of stand-up to reinvent your career to what it is today?
Well, I think that, early in my stand-up comedy career, I was already kind of looking ahead at the people that I loved their careers, whether there were highs or lows, which every career is going to have multitudes of. And really what I realized was, you're in a constant evolution, or else you're either becoming, kind of stuck in one sort of character in your life, or the worst thing is you're derivative of something you did previously. And I never wanted to allow either of those things to happen. So I took the scary early lane of, I'm going to communicate with my audience that I'm ever changing, and that the stand-up is it's going to move around a lot. And I think my first website in like 98 said, don't follow me unless you're a fan of risks, because I plan on taking a lot of them. And I let people know that was my mission statement. So the idea of reinventing is really more than anything just allowing yourself to, don't try to be all things for all people, grow with your ideas, grow with your philosophy, your personal constitution, and hopefully that audience will respect not just the output of material, but the person behind it who's allowing you to kind of see every facet of a career. And I've been lucky, 31 years, lucky to be able to grow and change with my audience in that way.
I really related to your bit about the creepy DMs, the direct messages on Instagram. I loved the story of the woman eating almonds and sending you a video of her shaving off her eyebrows. I have this guy, Dane, who follows me, who I don't follow. I have no idea who he is. And I swear to God, every single post of mine, he says, Queen, hashtag Queen. I swear to, I could post a video of my cat taking a shit on my face and he would be like, oh my gosh, slay Queen. Like, it's crazy. I feel like girls have it way worse when it comes to like creepy messages. Like, there's always some person claiming to be the Prince of Saudi Arabia in my DMs asking me to send me pictures of my feet. Like, do you still get a lot of that?
You try to steer clear of it, but at the same time, some things kind of make it through to the DM or into the comment section. I just think that there's a lot of people out there that are looking to push buttons, and some of them are saying things or doing things that may not even be their true intent, but it's getting them some form of attention. So very weird. I definitely get a lot of strange stuff still, but it feels like most of it is just somebody trying to pull a little focus for a minute.
I get it. Yeah. Another thing I deeply resonated with was, after watching your special Above It All, was that you said you never Google yourself. I actually paused your special and like stood up in my living room and I was like, yes, like we're both public figures. We're both people in the news. As someone who, like, I used to be so insecure and I always used to care what people think. I had to like work through a lot of trauma and have a lot of therapy to just finally give up the reins. I'm curious, like, where do you fall in line with that? Like, is there power, Dane, in not caring what people think of you and what the internet says?
Well, I think the long, arduous journey of that is when you start to realize, why are these things hurting me beyond just it's a hurtful statement? And it starts to kind of go back to, all right, what are the things that maybe happened to me or that I experienced or traumas in my youth that I need to realize, hey, you know what? These are words. They shouldn't be kind of pinging me as deeply. So I think that it's like a halfway. Some of it is just people being rude and not having tact. That hurts.
Yeah.
But when
Yeah.
you really let it like hang with you and disrupt your day or, whatever's ahead for you, then that's when I think that you go, maybe this is the worst version of a path to a greater perspective in myself. So I used it as that. I took some of the things that were, I was like, why are these things harmful early in my career? When I broke through for a while, you're the belle of the ball. It's all good.
Yeah.
And then after a few years, people start going like, all right, whatever, I'm sick of hearing about this person. Or for a number of reasons, you start getting the haterade and all that. And it was really looking at myself and going, why would I allow somebody I don't know to get into my, mood, to get into my emotional value?
Yeah.
And the work that I did there and kind of the therapy and unpacking, I would almost have to thank them in a sense because they prepared me for a better version of myself, the reinvented version of myself.
I see what you did there.
I know. I kind of like I'm keeping
play
it
on the theme. Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. Dane, listen, I've followed you for a really long time. I am a fangirl. Okay, I watched your special, but I will say one thing. What I resonated with you most on was, and I know a lot of people, I guess some people out there know this about you, but my father, my hero, is a 3-time cancer survivor currently living on dialysis. No bladder, no kidneys. He's like the bionic man. He's like a walking miracle. But when I learned from our mutual friend Nitish that both your parents passed away from cancer within 9 months of each other, I was like, I need to talk to this guy. I need to talk to this guy because like you, I've lost a lot of loved ones to cancer. We all will face loss in our lives, and how we react to those times can radically define us, I think, for better or for worse. I'm just curious because we do talk about grief and trauma and loss a lot on this show. How did you cope with that loss?
Well, first of all, I'm sorry to hear about your pops, and I understand all too well, having gone through that, like you said, with my mom and dad. The first coping mechanism, thankfully, is comedy. We laughed a lot. We laughed.
The best medicine.
We laughed so much, especially my mom and I, that I felt like some of the best laughs that we shared was during her incredible fight. She was also like just powerhouse. I think that cancer was worn out after my mom because she gave it, her best shot at that battle at 62, 63 years old. Once the laughs, fade and the reality of it and the grieving begins, I think that it teaches you such a deep empathy and understanding that this touches all of us.
Yeah.
My whole goal with everything after learning what I learned about cancer and then sharing so much space with people that would then come to my shows, understood my experience with my mom and dad, and then like yourself, people that trust me to share in their experience with me because I understand.
Right.
I think it just gives me a greater sense of purpose. I like to do a lot for whether it's stand up. I'm always rocking my stand up to cancer shirt. I was wearing it over the weekend, my first weekend of shows for my mom and dad, reminding them that they're always, close to my heart. And I'm keeping that, the value in any little or large spotlight that I get. I always try to put a little bit of that over onto the people that are fighting the good fight and hoping that we continue to build opportunity to stop it. Stop this disease, and especially for younger people. You want to see people have a real shot at life. So for a number of reasons, it moves me to want to be a more compassionate, empathetic, contributing member to the community around me.
I love that. And it also warms my heart to know that your parents were alive for so much of your success, right? I mean, and the fact that they were supportive of your unconventional career choice. I mean, look, some people grow up in households like you got to be a doctor, you got to be a lawyer, like you got to work a 9-to-5 desk job. That was not you, Dane. So really cool to hear that.
Yeah, no, they were fine with me slinging some dirty words as long as I did what I loved. They were great in, my pop was a business, he went to Boston College and it was all about business. So he was like, as long as you are business minded and understand the business of comedy, then I support it. And of course, my mom was just like, make them laugh, make everybody laugh, go for it.
Now, I learned in doing so, sorry, I'm a journalist. I did do a lot of research about you prior to this interview. You studied graphic design prior to getting into comedy. And that also was so interesting to me because you design your own merchandise. Is that true?
Well, I mean, now today I have some great people that are like liaisons that I'll draw something out.
You're like, I'm so rich now. I just, I'm like,
no, not at all. It's just that the tech has grown so exponentially that I was on Photoshop like 1.0 back in high school.
I was on Paint. Remember
vectors
Paint?
and layers in Paint? Yeah, in Paint. And so, but I really did learn and understand that like I could make my own back in the day, all my flyers and putting an image and putting all the information. I loved it. And it later helped me to realize the details of poster art and, again, graphic design for CDs or DVDs. So over the years, I've had a chance to behind the scenes use that little bit of knowledge that I got in my freshman year of high school when I only thought maybe that's what I'm going to be. If I don't do stand-up, I'll go into the graphic design stuff.
Well, here's the good news. If you fail at comedy, Dane, you could go be a graphic designer.
I know my backup or maybe my in retirement, if I ever get there, would be. But I still do it. It's funny. The guy that's working with me right now on the Perfectly Shattered tour, he's like, "What do you want the design to be?" And I was like, "Glad you asked." And I draw it out.
Oh, that's great.
I just sent him a picture that I took on my iPhone of like, I kind of drew this. And of course, they came back with beautiful artwork and shirts and assets. But I'm still always thinking in terms of visual, even with stand-up.
And you really are a do-it-yourself guy. And there's something to be said for that. This episode of Reinvented with Jen Eckhart is sponsored by Londonderry. If you, like me, are an ice cream lover but would love a healthier alternative with fewer calories, look no further than Londonderry, as they are literally reinventing the ice cream game. Londonderry Premium Ice Cream has just hit the USA and has opened up in the LA market first. Southern California, you have to go out and give this delicious ice cream a taste. It's available now at all Bristol Farms and Super King markets. This premium product is sold in pints and bars in the freezer section. Londonderry is crafted using only the finest ingredients from around the world, such as farm fresh milk from Australia, select African cocoa beans, and premium Belgium chocolate. Yum. From delicious classics such as cookies and cream, double chocolate, vanilla, caramel crunch, to their fabulous sorbet bar creations like raspberry, pink guava, my personal favorite, mango, and pina colada. Londonderry has been creating amazing ice cream and sorbet products for 30 years in 35 different countries. And the best part, Londonderry never uses artificial colors or preservatives. Londonderry has been awarded Product of the Year in the ice cream category for 2 years in a row, which is why I'm excited to partner with the brand. They are about to take over the luxury ice cream market, so LA listeners, get out there and purchase this deliciousness at Bristol Farms and Super King markets. Londonderry coming soon to all markets across the U.S. I read a really interesting article about you. I think it was in the LA Times, in which you spoke about turning down Saturday Night Live. You shared that you had this huge breakdown outside of Rockefeller Plaza. I'm here in New York City, not far from there. You sat on a bench, you couldn't breathe, you were like in a catatonic state-level panic attack, incapacitated.
Really?
You said the reason you couldn't do it, meaning you couldn't go in the building, is because you knew you'd get the job. Now, I understand the panic attack, but that last part was a bit confusing to me. Can you explain to my viewers and listeners what you meant by that?
Yeah, so I suffer from anxiety, and especially in the early part of my career, I didn't have any kind of steps into quelling it. I kind of just lived through it. So what would happen to me is I would feel anxious and all the traditional, like the heart rate and the throat is closing and a lot of worry. But when I would go on stage, there was something about the pressure of performance and the hyper focus on the act and probably not wanting to bomb, not wanting to do bad, that it kind of like pushed all those things aside, and I could really feel like a fulfilled, confident version of myself on stage. But I would come on stage, and even if like I had to meet three people and have some kind of say, quick meeting about something that did or didn't go wrong throughout the show, I got really worked up. I would get really nervous. Anything about having to have that, a moment of like confrontation. Confrontation was the trigger word for me. So when I went to SNL, knowing they brought me in specifically because they've been watching me in New York, they knew they had to replace Sandler. They wanted the description then was young, affable, white guy, play guitar, a lot of energy. I had covered all those bases. Also, for the record, just so I'm clear, Jimmy Fallon ended up getting this gig. And as much as I felt like I was going to get the job, given what I knew, the truth was, Jimmy might have gotten the job anyway, because he's awesome and he's a good friend of mine. So I kind of walked in there not knowing he was going in and feeling like this was going to be mine. And when I sat in front of Rockefeller Plaza, 1993 or 4, I had this one of the worst anxiety attacks. And it was because I realized I still didn't have the ability and the tools to fight for myself and to confront. And I heard from friends that were on the show in New York, it's all fighting behind the scenes. It's all fighting for your ideas, fighting for that first 30 minutes of showtime, fighting to have that best character. And you got to think about it. If you have a character that's on the come up in that show, but somebody else wants their character to be, front and center, there could be a little bit of like, pushback and you got to really be ready to go like, hey, fuck that. This is my week.
Right. Sounds very political behind the scenes there. Interesting.
Super. Multi-tiered levels of politics that I'm glad I got the gist of, but I called my manager and I said, I can't do it.
Do you have any regrets about turning down such a huge opportunity like SNL? I'm just curious.
No, it was actually the opposite. For some years being back on the road, it wasn't a regret, but it was certainly like, oh man, I hope I get another swing at the bat, because not at SNL, but something tremendous, because I felt like I was just languishing and back out on the road for a little bit. And then what I started to realize was I was more of a Lorne Michaels than I was even just a guest or visitor to the show, which was I'm more entrepreneurial and I'm a producer. Yeah. So I produced my own way into a generation of comedy fans that then when I finally built up to my second release and hitting Billboard charts and all this cool shit that was happening, Lorne Michaels called me and wanted my audience on Saturday Night Live. He wasn't introducing me to an audience. Now it was, will you bring your audience to us? So to go back and host it in the way that was, I was healthy and happy and my parents could be there, and it felt like
it came full circle.
It was a reminder of life that it's a missed moment is sometimes not failing, but it's setting you up for a later success. And you have to remember that.
That is so true. And thank you for sharing that. I think people look at you, Dane, as like this super overly confident guy who like gets up there and crushes the comedy scene and the stand-up act. But like for you as you're 50, 51 years old, for you to say and to admit that you struggle with anxiety, I think is such a powerful thing. Vulnerability is a powerful tool. And I think we need more of that. We need more honesty from people. So thank you.
Oh, for sure. I think it's like, we're all in it together. And I think that the better we understand that, we all have things that we bring to the table that are tools that are important in a group setting where you go like, okay, you're the person that has this greater ability, but then also understanding sometimes not what a weakness is, but like where am I not as astute, right? Where am I maybe not as ready for? And if you can team build in that regard to be very honest about, I know what I'm bringing to this, but I also know what I'm lacking. And that's where I need you. And hopefully we can work together. Those are the Judd Apatows in groups or the Sandler in groups that if you watch their careers, they assembled people around them to help where maybe they weren't always the person in command, but they had a Justice League of people around them to fulfill whatever those creative destinations were. And I wanted to have that same kind of template in my life and in my career.
Yeah. You know, the truth is a lot more alluring than any frills you can put on something else. I have some ugly truths from my past that I've had to own, and I know you have as well. You said an amazing quote in another article that I was reading. You said, quote, "If you're not a struggling comedian, then you're not a comedian." I loved that. It's so fucking true because I think that actually expands beyond the walls of comedy into every facet, every career in life, because the journey should be hard. It should be difficult. You should struggle. And I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about where you stand on cancel culture. You know, I'm friends with a lot of comedians, like low level, not like, you know, Dane Cook level, but like they do talk to me and they're like, they feel like they have to walk on eggshells and feel like they can't make certain jokes without hurting people's feelings. I just need to hear from you. Is cancel culture hurting comedy?
Well, I think we're seeing like a bit of a pushback on what like it I think at first it was almost like a fad of like who can we cancel and how, and some of it rightfully so. Obviously, some people needed their feet held to the fire, and we should be able to, as a society, call something out that's causing us harm, right? That isn't good welfare. But then on another level, especially in the arts, it's about, allowing somebody to share their story. And I think that if you're sharing a story that is personal to you, especially speaking to comics in particular, if it's your truth and you've lived it, that means like things that have been said to you, things that have happened to you, things that outwardly, even if it's your ignorance or your high watermark moment, that you have, parry thrusted in or been a part of, those are your stories to tell. Right. I think that you should be able to tell it any way that you experienced it. Where I think comics are getting in a little trouble is when you're just a shock comic who's trying to just go out there and say something for the sake of
shock and awe.
Holy shit. Yeah, then that's going to be a rough road for a little bit. But I do even think that's starting to lessen the quick snapback of like shutting somebody down completely. But I do know a lot of comics that they say the same thing. I feel like I can't be myself up there. And I say, well, that you need to push back on, because if you're talking about you or you're sharing your personal journal in stand up, then great. But if you're just going up there and making fun of another group of people, or you think it's great to, call out somebody who, isn't from your neck of the woods just because of the sake of a shocking joke, I think that stuff isn't going to fly the way it used to. And I won't miss it in stand up.
Yeah. I'm not sure if you've ever publicly commented on this, and I'm sure you have, but when you say that, my immediate thought is like Chris Rock when he took a swipe at Will Smith's wife Jada at the Oscars. I mean, I'm curious to know what your take is on that controversy after Will Smith stormed the stage and slapped him. I mean, do you have a dog in this fight? Do you feel the entire thing was staged or overblown, or are you just tired of hearing about it? How do you feel about that whole thing?
I definitely don't think it was staged. I'm friends with Chris. I think I didn't see the special, so I can't comment on. I saw excerpts, which, it's Chris Rock. So Chris Rock is always gonna, raise the bar in terms of like live performance. No dog in the fight, nothing like that. I just don't like seeing violence, and I don't like seeing physical confrontation. I don't think it's necessary in any way, shape, or form in stand-up, because it is jokes. You have the choice to, if you don't like the jokes, you can tap out. You can leave. You can never support that comic. But to go on the attack in any way, like, it still confuses me to this day as to why that even had to take place. I don't get it.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Speaking of cancel culture, and I'm sorry, I have to mention this because I just like giggled to myself when I was researching this. Actress Kate Hudson shaded you a couple months ago, calling you her quote worst on-screen kiss ever. Do you have that on a plaque somewhere hanging in your house? Do you take pride in that?
She was, I think, coming back at me because a few years back on Andy Cohen, he asked who the worst kisser was. And I said that Kate used to eat like, whatever she was eating for lunch.
Onions.
And would show up for those scenes. And so I think it's a little friendly ribbing, because I think that she's an incredibly talented person. And I had an amazing experience working with her. So I'll take the hit back since I'm the first one that put it out there.
So you don't have like a plaque on your wall that's like worst on-screen kiss ever. You don't have anything like that. Okay.
No.
I'll have to send you that along with a pin for my show. So, all right, Dane, there's a lot of serious things happening in the world right now. The war in the Ukraine, the price of eggs at the grocery store. I mean, global pandemics, the January 6th committee. I could go on and on and on and on. But I have to know, do you watch Vanderpump Rules on Bravo? And do you have an opinion on Scandival? And do you think our country will ever recover?
This is where I'm probably going to let down a lot of your audience, where I haven't come up for air outside of editing my special or being on tour. So
we need to cut the interview.
Aside from like a Marvel thing or two, I'm going to have to, if this is a game show, I guess is where I hit the pass button. I know nothing.
Yeah, we got to cut the interview now. That's unfortunate.
Kelsey, I didn't get my homework before this interview, so I didn't know that there was something I needed to watch.
You did not, but that's okay because I'm sure your fiance, Kelsey Taylor, does watch the show, so you should watch it with her and then report back and let me know what you think because you are missing life. Let me just tell you.
The tea is being spilt all over the place is what
all
you're
over. All over
the floor.
Okay, so our mutual pal, Nitish, wanted me to ask you this. He shared with me that you are a huge Star Wars fan, and I can tell just by looking at the Stormtrooper mask behind you there. He wanted me to ask you, Dane, why is life like Star Wars?
Why is life like Star Wars?
Why is life like Star Wars? I thought that was a bit odd, but I don't know. He said you're a big Star Wars hype guy, so I don't know.
Wow. I'm trying to figure out what that question means. I guess if I had to like read between the lines, I guess life is like Star Wars because it's about the light and the dark side, and you need to fight against the forces of evil in order to have a positive, outgoing, outstanding future. Nit, we should just cut this. This shouldn't be in the interview.
No, this is all staying. This
and
is
he can be like,
staying.
I should have thought of a better question. I could have thought of 10 better Star Wars questions for myself than what life is like Star Wars. It's weird. It's almost like you'd want to be like, Nit, it isn't. That's why we escape into it.
Right, exactly. Why are okay, let me rephrase. Why are you such a big Star Wars fan? I do this fun thing with my guests where I do like a rapid fire round of questioning. And one of my questions is always Godfather or Star Wars. And I will say, Dane, everyone so far has answered Godfather. You obviously would choose Star Wars. Why is that?
I would probably choose it because it was such an escape when I was a kid. It was the perfect age to where my comedy imagination coupled with this kind of fantastical visual, the most appeasing thing I'd ever seen in my life at that age was like sitting and watching that on the big screen. So I think probably just what it did for my belief in creativity more than anything else. I love the movies, but more I loved how I felt after watching them.
What's your favorite Star Wars movie? Do you have a favorite one?
Yeah, Empire Strikes Back, and then I like this Andor series, which is what you would call the Vanderpump Rules of Star Wars television.
There is no such thing.
If you're not watching the Vanderpump Rules of Star Wars, you're not watching Andor.
Oh, man. Are you a Mandalorian fan? I'm assuming so. That probably goes without saying.
I'm so not caught up. I have to catch up. The new season just dropped, and I'll watch that soon. When I'm on the road, I'll probably catch up on that.
Okay. Dane, you are now 51 years old.
Not yet. Give me a couple more weeks. I'm enjoying 50 until the 18th.
Oh, sorry to jump ahead there. Happy almost birthday. You've truly accomplished so much in your career. And looking back, I am curious. What would Dane Cook today tell Dane Cook when he was in his 20s?
Well, I think the breakthrough moment that I had as I got older, and especially realizing like I was kind of catapulted. Once you reach a certain level of success, there's no playbook. There's nobody to prepare you. And you're kind of just spun up in like all the praise and love and good fortune. A lot of it is like well-earned. But then there's like a level of like where it's just unrealistic amount of attention. And then you're still trying to figure out especially as a young kid who comes up, who am I? Really, who am I in the world? But all of that early anxiety, was right through that entire center point, which is, sometimes made it even more difficult to kind of land on my feet. I think if I had to go back, the one thing that I would want to say is like, be prepared for everything. It's not just dreams. When you're dreaming things up, it's inside of your heart or inside of your mind. I think big dreamers need to realize if you're dreaming it, that's something inside of you telling you that you can accomplish it. And so if you're going to accomplish it, then be prepared by knowing yourself, sense of self. Know myself better, and I could have probably dealt with a lot of more, even the slings and arrows or things that happened even later in my career that I then was prepared for. But I would tell that early 20-year-old, like, you're going to have these things. Not everything's going to work out the way you want it to, but be prepared for success. Not just the thought of wanting it, but be prepared to obtain it.
And to people in their 40s and 50s, get a colonoscopy and prepare correctly.
No, not 40. You want to wait closer to 50, because what I learned about colonoscopy is if you do it too soon, you don't catch it. So they actually, at 45, I went in and they were like, you should actually wait a few more years. So which I thought was kind of like counter. I'm like, wouldn't you want to know sooner? But they were
I did watch your little Jimmy Fallon bit about how you messed up on the prep. And like you literally walked away from the bathroom and you said to the toilet, we're never discussing this.
Yeah, we're never
again,
discussing this.
You and me. My gosh. Dane, it was an absolute pleasure having you on this show. Thank you for proving through your example that reinvention is the key to living a truly fulfilling and authentic life. Listen, a comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing ever grows from there. If people want to watch your new special, Above It All, where can they go?
So the cool thing is now we're pretty much everywhere. You can watch it on Apple. You can watch it on Amazon Prime, Google Play. It's around the world. We're in
DaneCook.com
countries, and of course, DaneCook.com. And the tour is happening right now and through the rest of the year. Perfectly Shattered tour. Come see some live comedy. And we're always, always, always throwing back love and support to Stand Up to Cancer. So glad that we had a chance to chat about that as well. So giving back and getting laughs. That's the year ahead.
I love it. But in addition to Above It All, just to be a weird fangirl for a moment, I know you've been in a lot of movies, but my favorite is Mr. Brooks. I don't know if anyone's ever told you that. Guys, my viewers and listeners, Mr. Brooks with Kevin Costner and Mr. Dane Cook here. If you haven't seen that either, go see it, rent it, buy it, watch it. You won't regret it. It's a suspenseful nail biter. It's just so good. Dane's a total weirdo in it, and I love every second.
That was a fun experience. Yeah, that's a psychological thriller, but it still holds up. And I was actually texting with Costner about 3 or 4 weeks ago because it was the 15th anniversary of Mr. Brooks. So we were right back and forth and sharing stories about
Did you wish each other a happy anniversary?
We did. We were like, hey, 15 years since we, were creepy in the car at night in those weird roles. But it's a movie that people to this day still hit me up and say, I caught that and I love it. So it means a lot to me.
It stands the test of time. It should have won an Oscar. If I was responsible for handing out Academy Awards, Mr. Brooks would have been it. So
you know what? I appreciate that. That means a lot to me. Thank you. It was fun.
As for this podcast, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to Reinvented. That's available wherever you listen to podcasts. Spotify, Apple, YouTube, iHeartRadio, you name it, it's there. Go ahead, give it 5 stars and a nice review. We love that. I'm Jen Eckhart. That was Dane Cook. Thank you for listening.